Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 379, Merchant's Cove.
Welcome, citizens of Meeple Nation. For the next 30 minutes, sit back and enjoy.
Meeple Nation Podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. GameToppersLLC.com just finished their Kickstarter a little while ago. Their third Kickstarter. They have a lot of awesome stuff. They already had a lot of awesome stuff, and now they have a lot more. Go to GameToppersLLC.com and check them out. They've got new legs to turn your already amazing game surface into its own table without any separate support structure underneath. New mats. They've got new dining covers to cover your game and turn it into a flat surface that you can eat on it or whatever else and not worry about.
Wait. They have
underneath.
this table that they can make it into a table?
So they can make your game table into a regular table. Multi-purpose.
Whoa!
Check them out, GameToppersLLC.com. Awesome stuff, as always, and it will improve your gaming experience.
We are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I'm Logan Howard.
I'm Andy Holiday. I'm Nathan Howard.
And I'm Dave Holiday.
Hey, did you know that we have a website that has been updated by our friend James? It's pretty fantastic. It includes blogs that come out each week, our photos from Instagram, and links to all the current episodes. It's a fantastic time.
It's great. James has done a good job on it. So this week we are discussing Merchant's Cove. This is a game that I kickstarted.
It was one of those games that took forever to get to, right?
My goodness, yes. I was supposed to get it last year. COVID hit. It was just a typical Kickstarter to start with, so of course it was delayed. And then COVID hit, which made it even more delayed. And all the shipping issues that have been going on. Luckily, it caught the front end of that, so I got the game right before the real mayhem started with all the shipping problems. So Merchant's Cove is a highly asymmetrical Euro game. Each player assumes a different role of a merchant in their own unique shop, making their own unique goods to sell to the adventurers coming to the docks that will either buy or they're selling on the ships to enter into their guilds that are on the island. You're going to contend to sell your goods. Each player uses their own role-specific board. Basically, everyone's playing a mini-game. Each has a mini-game, their own board, their own rules, their own rule book, in fact, that tells you how to play a particular merchant that you are going to play that game. And then you all interact on the main board, where all the adventurers are going to be arriving on the docks, and where the guild halls are, and where the villagers are that you can hire as staff in your merchant or in your shop.
All of that stuff you're describing right there is all communal, right?
Right, so everything on the main board are things that everyone can interact with, can do actions on, or whatever you're going to do in the game, whether you're selling, choose which dock you're going to sell at. There's 3 docks. The first dock, you can only sell large goods, because you're creating large and small goods of different colors. You can sell only large goods at the first dock, only medium goods at the second dock, and then the black market dock, which is the third dock, you can sell either large or small goods, but you do gain a corruption card, which corruption cards are going to be worth negative points. If you're lucky, they can possibly be worth positive points. That depends on what icons are on that corruption card. So when you draw a corruption card, it will have a corruption icon, the rogue icon on there. But then it can also have 1 or 2 icons matching the different guild halls for each of the adventurers. So there's fighters, there's wizards, there's bards, and there are nobles. Each of those have their own symbol. You will get points at the end of the game for each of those icons that you have in front of you. And that's based on the number of merchants that are in each of those individual guild halls. As you're playing the game, you're going to be taking actions, and those actions are going to cost time. So there's a clock on the main board, and this is very similar, Nathan, to Nova Luna.
Right.
As you're taking an action, you're moving your token around the lunar cycle, I guess, in Nova Luna's case, right?
Exactly.
Whoever's furthest back is the person that's the active player. Multiple players are on the same space. Whoever's token is on the top gets to go first. So you can manage your time to try to take, potentially, multiple turns in a row. I know, Logan, you played Chronomancer.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to take a lot of actions in a row because of the fact that you were able to freeze time with that particular merchant.
It was a really interesting concept because I didn't get certain bonuses and freedoms that everybody else had, but I was able to try to manipulate it. Played it twice. I had varying success. The first time I did really well with it. The second time not so much. And I don't think it was really the play style that made a huge difference. It was just interesting the limitations I had because I had a super cool ability.
Yeah, I have not yet played the Chronomancer. It looks like it's really interesting.
I was a little distracted here because as we were talking about this, I saw a Facebook post earlier where someone was saying, I really love Spirit Island, and I just picked up Root. Are there any games that are similar to this? And I couldn't think of any at the time. And then as soon as we start talking tonight, I'm like, Merchant's Cove totally falls into that. With Spirit Island, you're playing as the spirits of the island, and each one is drastically different. The actions they take is completely different from one player to the next. And the same with Root. Root feels like you're playing your own game. And same thing here with Merchant's Cove. It's really hard to, not necessarily really hard, but you don't necessarily pay attention to what the other players are doing because what they're doing is completely different from what I'm doing. Especially if you're new to the game and you start playing that. You can't look at the player before you to see, oh, okay, that makes sense. I see what Logan did. Okay, I see what Andy did there, so now I can know what I can do on my turn. There is a little bit of similarities, especially with the going to the piers and you draft the guys off the boats.
So you have boats that have meeples that go into the boats. Each of the meeples are different colors that match the different factions. When you pass certain spots on the clock is when you actually place a person, pull a meeple out of the bag, put that meeple in one of the ships. When the ship fills, that's when it gets docked. You choose which dock it goes to.
There's just so much variety in this game. It was very enjoyable. We're each playing 4 different solo games. I was very intrigued with the idea. I really like Spirit Island and I really like Root because of that uniqueness that is there. And Merchant's Cove, at first I was this is going to be confusing, but it was great. I really, really enjoyed the game.
So you did the roll and write Oracle, correct? What did you think of that?
The roll and write was different. Even on my board, my own player board, there's different moves that I can take. Different actions that you can take, and those actions are completely different. So you can take actions where you're creating a star chart, where you're mapping and trying to fill in dot-to-dot grid. Or you can take an action where you're doing the horoscopes. It has 2 tracks on it, one that you're going to go in ascending order and one that you're going to go in descending order. You'll take that number and you'll put it in, and then the number that comes next has to be either a higher, or if you're in the lower row, it has to be a smaller number. Just how wide that scope was for just my character, and then to watch Logan with his time traveling, and you with the Dragon Rancher. You kept growing these big dragons. You would get these giant dragons, and you score a bunch of points, and I was like, how do you do that? But it's just interesting because as you watch, and you think, okay, now I want to try Logan's guy. I want to try the dragon guy. And then Dave had the blacksmith. All very different games.
I don't know if we fully mentioned, but the common goal of the game is to create things to sell to market. It's called Merchant's Cove. So we're different merchants getting different artifacts, treasures, whatever they are, to the market to sell to the customers.
Right, and we're not all selling the same items, which is great.
Ultimately, we're playing the same game. We're just going about it differently to create the items that we're selling.
Exactly, yeah.
We're all selling the same colored items. There's blue, yellow, green, and red. And there's 2 sizes. Typically 2 sizes. The Dragon Rancher has 3 sizes of dragons that she sells. Basically, we're making large and small goods of those 4 different colors. But those goods are different. The Time Traveler's going back in time and getting relics and artifacts. The Oracle is selling charms, which are the small goods, and tomes, which are the large goods. The Dragon Rancher's selling dragons. The Blacksmith is selling weapons and armor.
Potion Master's doing potions small and large.
There's an innkeeper.
Yeah, the innkeeper is
they're
really
different.
interesting. Yeah, the innkeeper's renting out beds and selling drinks at tables. He actually brings permanently people into the tavern, which takes him off of the main board.
Changes scoring for everybody, potentially.
Exactly.
That's one of the more interesting things. When we get to the point in the game in the round that we're actually selling our materials, we're not fighting over customers. Whatever pier we go to, if there's 3 red guys there, everybody sell all of our red treasures to those people, and it's just a multiplier of how many points you get. If you have 3 treasures and they're each worth 6, and then there's 3 guys there, then they're worth 18 points.
One of the things that I feel like maybe we kind of goofed up in playing, because there's so much depth thematically in this game. Logan, you were just talking about it's Merchant's Cove. We're all individual merchants with very different goods, very different methods of creating goods. There's just a lot of depth to that. The game's fun. It's a really good game, and we've enjoyed it. But as we've been talking about it, I feel like dropped the ball a little bit in not appreciating more of that thematic depth during gameplay. Does that make sense?
That does. There are small touches that I've noticed that I just love. the Oracle, for example. I know we keep coming back to the Oracle, but I love the fact you have a dish that you're using every single round and it has a divider in it, and you're rolling the bones. You have a bone and you're casting dice, rolling bones, and you voodoo it all in there, and a coin. Depending on what side of the dish those land on, you have to pick a side that you're going to use for that round, and that determines what actions you are going to be able to do. What a cool thing. I love that aspect of it.
The whole divination that the Oracle's doing, if it happens that you get everything on one side of the dish, that's really bad.
Yeah, you get a corruption.
So you got to make sure that when you're shaking that up, put your hand over there so that stuff is going to fall on both sides. You know, there's a couple of ways that you can move one piece to one side or the other. Incorporating that as a mechanic, I thought was great.
I noticed that in the divination, which is the bottom of your roll and write board, you are much better at that than I was. So what you do with that is you're guessing which color of cards are going to come out. It's a D4, and you say you roll the 4, and say, oh, well, then the next 4 cards, or meeples, right? The next 4 meeples, excuse me, the next 4 meeples that are going to get pulled from the bag will be green, for example. And I don't know how many times I guessed wrong, but it was a lot.
It was.
I think there was only one time I guessed incorrectly, but I was doing a lot of math off, thinking, oh, okay, I got that. And then I didn't realize till near the end of the game that the colors were different. As I was mathing, I was way off, so I just got lucky. But it worked out for me.
It did. Like Logan said, you want to pay attention to what color meeples are landing on the piers, because that is going to determine what type of goods and the sizes of goods that you're going to want to sell. Because you're going to be looking at those ships, okay, that ship has got a lot of warriors, which are red. Maybe I want to get some large red goods, and then that ends up going to the middle dock, which are for small goods. So you don't have to sell your red goods if you don't want to. You can hold on to them for a later round and maybe get a little bit more out of them. Because like Logan said, it's a multiplier. If I have 3 large goods that are worth 7 points, in the example Logan made, if there's 3 red meeples, each of those goods is multiplied by 3. You can really score a lot of points if you have a lot of meeples that match the color of your goods that you're trying to sell.
The downside to holding them, though, is that you only have a few of each. In fact, I think some of them only have 2 of the large goods of each color.
Right.
Take that risk. Well, there is 1 red this time. Do I not sell them in hopes that I get 3 reds next time? People that I can sell to? You have to make that decision. One of the things I do also love about this is in the gameplay, as you mentioned, past that spot on the clock, as each individual passes that spot on the clock, draw a meeple out of the bag, and they get to decide which of the boats to put it on. There's going to be 6 boats most of the time. Sometimes there will be a 7th boat, basically serve double duty at any dock. Again, it creates a lot more strategy and a lot more variation in what's going to happen. You're trying to look and determine what you think other people are going to do. Do they want green people to go to this dock where be able to sell stuff for a whole lot? Or are they trying to get those green people, instead of going to the dock, down in the guild hall to score a ton of points? You're trying to really just figure out a lot of stuff about what other people are doing. One of the things that I think that does is that creates a lot more, I want to try that guy, I want to try that guy. You know, when you're playing this, I have no idea how to read what you're trying to do as the Oracle, because I haven't played the Oracle, right? Really difficult to do that. Again, that just makes it so we want to get this to the table more so that I can get to know all of them so that I can better strategize how to do everything.
You touched on with meeples going to either the docks or the guild hall. It's probably the most direct way that you can interact with each other instead of just like playing your own game. Mm-hmm. And it's one thing that you should pay attention to because of math. I think it was Wizards and the Nobles. They had less meeples out there than all the other ones. So you'd have to count how many are already in the guild hall, how many are out there. Are they going to go to the bag, the guild hall, based on the colors and your icons that you have for cards that you've gotten from the corruption? You get bonus points at the end of the game from assistants, I think they are, villagers that you have help you out.
Staff, yeah.
Staff, you get icons from them as well. It's almost counter-drafting-esque, but also planning for your own. I fill up a particular ship, not because I have a lot of goods that I'm going to sell to that particular ship and send it to the docks, because they're set up in a way that only certain boats can go to certain docks. It's not universal. They can cross from one end of the board to the opposite end of the board. I'm planning, I want those 3 nobles on that boat. I definitely want them to go to the guild hall because I'm going to get so much more victory points on it from there. I can risk not selling to the nobles this time.
And going off of that, as you see stuff, you see what goods they have that are ready to go to market. So when I produce a good, or I produce a large good or a red good, a large red good, that is on my table ready to go. Everybody sees what I have ready to head to market, and so you can manipulate those boats by filling a boat and sending it to a different dock. If I see Logan's going to have a lot of green, I want the red for maybe a future turn. There's only one red guy on there. I'm going to try to fill up that boat, and then you have the option to send it to pier on the right or the pier on the left, and so I can force that boat to go to the other pier.
There's only one pier that counters that, and now it's the black market.
Right.
Black market, you can sell any of your goods, big or small, there. The only downside is if you go there, you do have to take a corruption die. I think our corruption cards, thank you, Andy. I don't know if we mentioned how much corruption is worth, but it's the same thing for all the other meeples. It's just a guild hall of rogues that you have on the board. Every time, instead of going to the docks to sell, because they do have some black market items for them to sell, but if they get to the guild hall, each one of those becomes a multiplier for negative points at the end of the game. We've kept it down in our games that we've played, but it can get pretty bad.
You can get it to where you have a ton of negative points if you've taken a lot of corruption. Once again, it really depends on how well you manage those rogues going into the rogue's den. If they get pulled out of that bag and end up in the rogue's den, that's great. You're going to get fewer rogues on the ships to sell goods to, which most of the time you can't sell anything to the rogues. Occasionally you'll get the nefarious goods and sell, but that's not a common thing to be able to get. You get those when you hire certain villagers as your staff, and you can only ever hold 4 villagers. Not having those on the ship to increase the number of points you're going to get potentially from a sell, but that can really come back and bite you at the end of the game with negative points.
I feel like we need to back up just a little bit here and talk a little bit more about filling up the boats. Every time we add a meeple to a boat, it gets more full. You mentioned there are 6 boats. 3 boats that will go to the pier on the left, which is the black market, or the pier in the middle, Grand Plaza, where they will purchase small goods. And then there's 3 boats on the right side that will either go to the pier on the right, where they buy large goods, or the Grand Plaza in the middle again. If those 3 boats on the right, one of them sets sail and goes to the pier on the right, the bazaar, to sell big goods, now there's only 2 boats left to go to that middle, to the Grand Plaza. However, if one of the boats from the group of 3 on the left goes to the Grand Plaza, then those 2 boats that were left on the right, the Grand Plaza can take 2 boats, one from each side. So there's going to be 1 boat left on each side. It's that boat that's left that will fill up the guild halls. That's where that strategy comes in. Oh, shoot, that boat that I want to get to the guild hall because it has 2 greens on it is about to get full. I don't want somebody else to fill it up and put it at the bazaar. I don't want it to set sail at all because I want those greens to go to the guild hall, so I need to fill up another boat quick.
The strategy for putting the meeples on the boats really becomes more strategic, I would say, in later rounds, because you play for 3 rounds. You go around the clock 3 times. First round, you just go around the clock, put meeples on whenever you pass the certain spots on the clock. The second round, there's a rat token that is on one of the hands of the clock that comes off and goes on the 1 o'clock space, which means everybody's tokens now start at the 2 o'clock space instead of the 1 o'clock space. You have less time to spend doing actions for that second round. However, because you remove that rat token off that hand, you can actually move up onto the hand and then back down, which gives you a little bit of extra time. That does skip your opportunity to pull a meeple out of the bag and place it on the ship.
That's a big decision, right? And you want to pull those meeples out of the bag.
If you go up on the hand, you do take a corruption card. So there's another penalty for gaining that extra increment of time.
Which the corruption could be really bad at the end of the game, but out of all the times I've played this, I don't think I've ever debated not having that time. Time to me was so much more valuable for actions than it was, oh no, I don't get to put a meeple out there, because every single time we were able to fill up the boats.
I agree. It wasn't a choice for me either. It was easy. However, first game that we played, corruption lost me the game. So having too much corruption was a big deal.
The second time we played it wasn't near as hurtful. We managed the rogues really well that second game. I did forego going up on the hand one time, and I actually regretted it. So I'm kind of with you, Logan. I think most of the time, unless maybe under special circumstances, if you really want a boat be in a certain spot, let's say there's a boat with 3 wizards on it, and I really want those wizards to go to the guild hall because I have a ton of wizard icons in my area, and I really, really, really need those wizards to go to the guild hall. At that point, I might make sure both ships are close to sailing. At that point, I might skip the time and put a meeple out on one of those boats to make sure one I want goes to dock and the one that I want to make sure those meeples get to their proper guild hall, just for points.
Everybody has an action that they can take to get rid of corruption. It's just different on how everybody accesses it, I think I should say. Is because everybody's different, and so then everybody has different ways to do things. You get to the point where you can look at your corruption die, or you're not, I keep saying die. You look at your corruption card and look at the icons. Each one is different on the backside. It might have only one corruption icon, it might have two. It will have a different symbol on there. So like what you were saying earlier about you really want those wizards in the guild hall. If you already have all those icons for victory points, corruption has the icon. Hopefully you can get a net benefit from your corruption card, having the wizards in the guild hall. You go to get rid of corruption cards, you have a tier of, well, I really need to get rid of this one because it's going to be negative points. This one will be worth less negative points.
And I do like the fact that there is that layer of strategy as far as the boats go. One thing that we haven't discussed, Logan, you kind of brought it up, that everybody has a way of getting rid of corruption. Yes and no. Everybody has a staff tile. That icon is on everybody's staff tile. But in order to actually be able to perform that, you have to hire staff and have that location staffed with. There's 4 different locations on everybody's staff tile. Everybody's staff tile is different with different actions, but that's a common one, is getting rid of a corruption card. All the other ones typically pertain to that merchant's abilities on their board. Usually a lesser version of the actions on the board, but the benefit to doing that action when you activate your staff is you get to do all 4 of them for the time that you've spent on it.
So it becomes a more valuable action later on after you've hired a bunch of staff.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of this game. One of the actions on your main board is activate your staff. If you only have one staff member, then you only activate that one mini ability. But if you have all 4 positions staffed when you take that ability, you form all 4 of them, and it can be very, very mighty.
It's just different how everybody's able to get that action because the time traveler, Chronomancer, it was very different because my board was constantly shifting as I traveled through time. It was circular time. That action would be there, but it was in a different spot. It would take different time of action, and then I would have to stop at particular points, either in the past when time froze, or in the present. It had certain hard stops in which I could take it. Plan my turns in advance, position myself if I was going to take the staff action. Each one's so different from where you guys were. You're just like, oh, I just want to do this turn, which is so much different player to player.
That is one common thing on all the player boards is you have a miniature that represents your merchant. You have to move that every round. You can't stay on the same action. Each of those actions is going to have a little hourglass, or 2 hourglasses potentially, and that will tell you how many spaces you need to move around on the clock. If I want to take the staff action, maybe I have 4 staff members in a super powerful action, but you can't take it 2 turns. You have to go somewhere else, and then you can always come back to it. I thought was nice is that you always have to be moving around, doing different things on your board, and that goes with every single one of the merchants. Right. The base game comes with 4 merchants. It comes with the Alchemist, the Blacksmith, the Chronomancer, and the Captain. And then with the expansions, you have the Innkeeper, the Oracle, and the Dragon Rancher.
Was it in one expansion or different expansions?
All 3 of those are different expansions. Plus there's the Secret Stash expansion, which just comes with extra goodies. It had a lot of good stuff in it.
Like what?
Well, it had rogue cards, and I can't remember if the rogue cards, I think there were some in the base game, but the vast majority of the rogue cards, which we haven't talked about yet, come in the Secret Stash. Rogue cards give a special power whenever you pull a rogue out of the bag. For example, there's a rogue card that whenever you pull a rogue out, if possible, it has to go onto another ship with a rogue. That ship can get filled up with rogues pretty stinking quick, which could make it almost useless at the dock, or it could really fill up the rogue den. And also, each of those rogue cards tells you how many rogues start out in the rogue's den at the very beginning of the game and how many go in the bag. When you populate ships every round, after every round the ships will empty out. They get repopulated with 2 meeples before the next round starts. The rogue card will tell you if you pull a rogue out during that phase, if it goes back in the bag or if it goes to the ship. Quite a few of these rogue cards. It kind of changes the game, not a lot, but it does change a little bit of the game, add a little bit of flavor and variety to each game that you play. It also adds scenarios for solo play. So you have a scenario book that you're going through for solo play. I haven't played it yet. It looks really cool. I love the fact that they made solo play to where it will be more interesting, going through actual story and scenarios for it. I look forward to trying that out and seeing how good it plays. I haven't played this solo at all, but you play with the peddler as the autonoma
I like that more and more games are using that automa. It allows you to play those games that maybe wouldn't necessarily get to your group's game table, or games that maybe you don't have a game group. Yeah, they play a little bit different, but still gives you a fun opportunity. I've been playing the Great Western Trail. There's an app that goes through the automa for that. It actually works out really well. I always get excited when games include that.
It's nice because it also lets you play without other people.
Yeah. Who don't tip the board, turn the board.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even think about that.
This is something that I think is actually really interesting and really nice for a Kickstarter game, especially a bigger one like this. Everything's available on Amazon right now. As of today, the day that we're recording, I can go through and I can add the base game on all of my expansions, and they're all on Prime.
Yeah, and the expansions are reasonable. I mean, they're $25 for an expansion is great.
Well, they're not huge expansions
They're not
either.
It's just you're getting one merchant.
Not huge in size or anything,
Yeah.
but definitely huge in gameplay and gives
Content,
you content.
Replayability
Yeah.
factor of it too, which is another reason why I can see the solo play being more attractive in this is because of the high replayability. You want to try out all of the merchants. We have a hard time getting games to the table multiple times.
We do.
So being able to actually try all these really makes that solo play far more attractive to me because I want to try every single one of the merchants, and the fact that it has the scenario book, that's just the cherry on top.
And I love that the game's just available, because I think far too often with Kickstarters, they're great games, but then they're just not out there for purchase. And if they are out there for purchase, they've doubled or tripled in price in some cases with some Kickstarters, because they're so quote-unquote valuable because there's a limited supply of them.
People hear about a game, they get excited about a game, they want to add that game to their collection, and find the game's not available.
With it actually being available, I think it's such a fantastic that they were able to kickstart and have enough resources to not only provide just for their backers, but hopefully make some extra money by selling them to retailers.
The one thing I wish they've done with this game is maybe added a little bit more complexity with the mini games. I don't know, they're just very simple mini games. They're not real complex, not very deep at all. A little bit more complexity and it would have really pushed this over the top for me.
Because as you're listening to us talk, and we're like jumping all over the place, there's a lot going on the board all at the same time. There's a lot going on with your mini game that's tying into the bigger game. When you're actually sitting down to play, it's not overwhelmingly difficult to play.
It's really not. And you put the game on the table and it takes up so much space. It is a very big game. Once you explain the rules, and deer in the headlights look kind of goes away once they get through the first round. You kind of understand, oh, okay, this is how it goes. At that point, you're going full speed ahead.
I thought the game was great. I only got to play it the one time, but I'd very much be anxious to play it again. I'd like to try my same character again. The game we actually played was a really close game. It's a high-scoring game, too. Dave and I tied. We scored 360 points. The tiebreaker was whoever was the most ridiculously good-looking, and that went to Dave. Or it could have been the goods that they had on their board. I don't know.
One or the other.
One or the other.
One's kind of believable, the other one's less so.
The goods is a plausible option.
It's a very high-scoring game if corruption doesn't go crazy. That can drastically reduce the score as well.
Going back to what we talked about between the two games that we played, first game, there were a lot more rogues in the Rogue's Den. Our first game was not near as high scoring of a game, whereas that second game, substantially higher scoring. It is interesting how the dynamics of just gameplay can change how many points you're really scoring. And once again, how much corruption you have. Like Dave said, that's why he lost the first game. So that is Merchant's Cove. Absolutely loved playing this game. Gotta be honest, I had built this up. So excited to get it. I was so stinking excited for it. Just the asymmetry of it, how interesting it looked. I wasn't disappointed. I think it's a solid game.
I think it's a very good game. I love the variety in the players, the variety in the games. I love the variety. The variety leads to replayability and that opportunity to try different roles, to have a completely different experience, the rogue cards and how that can affect the game. Huge replayability in the game. We just need to stop buying campaign games, and so we can get games like this to the table more often.
I'm not sure that last statement is true or acceptable, but we need to figure out a way to get games like this to the table more often.
We need to figure out how to get Nathan to third game night of the week.
I'm lucky I get to do 2 a week. 3 a week is pushing it.
I agree, though. I think this game is solid, and I'm excited to try more of the different merchants.
Potion Master looks super interesting. I think we've talked about Potion Explosion on the cast before. That's basically the mini game in that game, which I love, Potion Explosion. That looks super interesting. There's just a lot going on with this game. It makes you want to replay your role that you played before just to see, was it a fluke that I did it, or can I do it better the next time?
I find it interesting that both Logan and Nathan, you both wanted to play the same character the first time. You said you wanted to play the Oracle again.
The Oracle again, yeah.
That's exactly what Logan wanted to do, is play the Chronomancer again. I've played it 3 times, and I've played 3 different people. I would be happy playing any of those again, but I really want to try one of the new guys.
For me personally, I like to get a handle on a strategy or whatever. Talking about Root was on my 10 for 10. The clan I've played the most is the Cat clan. I've tried the Valkyrie clan as well, and I've tried that a couple times, but my go-to clan was the Cat clan. I tried the Mouse or Forest, the peaceful ones that are trying to... I only tried that one once. Where there's a game like this where there's options, I like to try the one that I've played a couple of times so that I feel like I got a handle on it to say, okay, I'm comfortable with the Oracle. Then I can go on and try something else. Kind of like Logan saying, was it a fluke that I scored 360 points, or did I actually do something right?
It's kind of hard for me because like that too. Take something, what can I do better? How can I improve? I'm weighing that against my favorite game is the new game. Every different person you play in this game is close to a new game as you can get.
This game may be on Dave's top 5 after he gets done playing because it's all new. Always all new. I know there's a lot of people that have compared this to Root, and I would say, as far as asymmetry, it's like Root, but the asymmetry doesn't really affect anybody else. Very solitary asymmetry to it, whereas Root has more player interaction as far as the asymmetry goes.
I see that to a point, but there's definitely involvement. You're involved in getting Meeples to the guild houses, and that's competitive. We're each trying to influence that.
Yeah, I think it's just the asymmetry side of it. You're playing your own minigame, and what you're doing on your board doesn't really affect anybody else's game. What you're doing on the main board absolutely does.
I agree with that 100%.
Merchant's Cove, check it out, like Logan said, be available on Amazon, which is awesome. It sounds like something you'd enjoy. Pick it up. We have absolutely enjoyed playing this, so...
I recommend the game for sure. High on my list.
Until next time.
We'll see you at the Cove trying to beat Dave because he's ridiculously good looking.